The courthouse in Cedar Falls had never felt so charged. It was a modest building, beige walls, old wooden benches polished by countless years of shifting, restless bodies. But today, every inch of it felt electrified, as if the air itself knew something extraordinary was coming. Deputies moved with an unusual stiffness, attorneys whispered more urgently than usual, and even the ceiling fans hummed with a strange, restless rhythm. In the center of this tension stood 3-year-old Emma Sinclair, a small, porcelain-faced toddler whose soft brown curls bounced against her cheeks as she clung tightly to her mother's hand. Her eyes, large, observant, unsettlingly aware for a child her age, darted around the courtroom with curiosity instead of fear. It was as if she saw more than the average person could, as if she recognized truths that adults had long forgotten how to notice. Her mother, Megan Sinclair, gripped her hand with trembling fingers. She wasn't trembling because of the crowded courtroom or the stern-looking judge in black robes. She trembled because she knew her daughter, and she knew what happened the last time Emma spoke to a dog. Deputy Cole Harrington, tall, broad-shouldered, and carrying the perpetual tiredness of a man who had seen too much, stood beside his partner, K9 Ranger, a massive sable German shepherd whose calm, trained posture made most people step out of his way. But not Emma. She looked at Ranger as if she already knew him, as if she had been waiting for him. The gallery was packed, journalists, neighbors, and people from nearby counties, crowded in like they were watching the climax of a movie rather than a legal hearing. Everyone had heard rumors about today's testimony. Everyone had heard the whispers about the toddler who had seen something she wasn't supposed to see, about the dangerous men involved, about the missing witness, about the police dog who had reacted unusually during the investigation. But no one knew the whole truth. The judge, an older man with stern features and cautious eyes, struck his gavel once, commanding silence. "We are resuming the preliminary hearing in the matter of State of Iowa versus Brian Keller," he announced. Deputy Harrington approached with K9 Ranger. Cole nodded and guided Ranger forward. The dog moved with disciplined precision until he spotted Emma. Ranger stopped, his ears perked, his head tilted, almost confused, as if he sensed something familiar. Cole frowned. "Easy, boy," he whispered, giving the leash a slight tug. Ranger didn't move. He didn't respond at all. Instead, he stared at Emma, unmoving, unblinking, as if analyzing every molecule around her. Megan swallowed hard. "Emma, sweetheart, stay here, okay?" But her voice cracked, betraying her fear. Emma didn't respond. She simply tilted her head the same way Ranger had, mirroring him with eerie accuracy. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge peered over his glasses. "Is there a problem with the K9 deputy?" "No, Your Honor," Cole said quickly, though he didn't fully believe it. Ranger had worked dozens of high-stress cases, bomb threats, drug busts, kidnapping recoveries. He never froze. He never stared like this. He never reacted emotionally. But right now, Ranger looked scared. Not of Emma, of what she represented. Emma released her mother's hand. "Emma, no," Megan snapped, grabbing for her daughter. But Emma stepped away calmly, deliberately, like a child who had already made up her mind. Her tiny sneakers padded softly against the courtroom floor as she approached the towering German shepherd. Cole tensed. "Judge, permission to." The judge raised a hand. "Wait." Everyone watched as Emma stopped directly in front of Ranger. She looked up at him. Ranger lowered his head, slowly, cautiously, as if bowing. A wave of startled gasps filled the courtroom. Cole felt a cold shiver run through him. Ranger never bowed, not even to him. And then Emma did something no one expected. She leaned forward, placed her little hand on the side of Ranger's face, and whispered something. The sound was too soft for anyone to hear. It wasn't English, not clearly. It wasn't babbling either. It was intentional, soft, rhythmic, almost like a secret code. Ranger's reaction was immediate. His body stiffened. His ears shot up. His eyes widened, not with aggression but with recognition. Deputy Cole took a step forward. "Emma, sweetheart, don't touch the dog." But Ranger made a quiet sound. A sound Cole had only heard once before. The night Ranger detected something buried in the woods miles outside town. A whimper. Soft, shaky, almost fearful. Emma stepped even closer, resting her forehead gently on Ranger. Her breath brushed against his fur as she whispered again, longer this time. Ranger responded by lowering himself fully to the ground, flattening out protectively in front of her. "Deputy," the judge said sternly, "what is happening?" I don't know, Your Honor." Ranger suddenly lifted his head sharply, turning his gaze toward the back door of the courtroom, the secure hallway used only by law enforcement. He stared at it with such intensity that half the gallery turned to look. Cole's grip tightened on the leash. "Ranger," he whispered. "Nothing." The dog didn't acknowledge him at all. His breathing became heavier, nostrils flaring. His tail stiffened. Muscles rippled down his spine as every sense went on high alert. Megan rushed forward, snatching Emma away from him, her panic palpable. "Why did she do that?" she whispered frantically. "Why would she say anything to him? She doesn't talk to anyone. She barely even talks to me." The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Sinclair, what did she say?" Megan's hands trembled violently. I don't know. She hasn't spoken real words in months." The gallery erupted with whispers. Emma squirmed in her mother's arms, reaching back toward Ranger as if she needed him. Ranger let out a deep, guttural sound. Not a bark, not a growl, something between a warning and a plea. Cole stepped beside him. "What is it, boy?" Ranger lifted one paw and pointed it, not literally, but in a trained directional alert, toward the back hallway again. That was a behavior reserved for only the gravest cases: explosives, weapons, fleeing suspects. But there had been security checks all morning. The courthouse was clear. Wasn't it? Cole's heart pounded. "Judge, I think Ranger's alerting to something." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Security checked that hallway 15 minutes ago." Ranger growled. A low, rumbling, primal growl that vibrated through the floorboards. Emma suddenly wriggled free of her mother's arms and sprinted back toward Ranger, pressing both hands against his chest. She whispered urgently, almost desperately. Ranger stopped growling instantly. But he didn't relax. He didn't lower his guard. He simply stared at the door, frozen, waiting. The judge finally raised his gavel. "Deputy, escort your K-9 to investigate that hallway. Something is clearly." He stopped mid-sentence. Because the back door, the one Ranger had been staring at, began to creak open. Slowly, painfully, as if someone on the other side was pushing it with trembling hands. Ranger snarled, teeth flashing for the first time all morning. The entire courtroom rose to their feet. Cole positioned himself defensively. Megan grabbed Emma and stepped backward. The door continued to open. 1 inch. 2 inches. 3. Cole pulled his weapon. The gallery screamed. The judge rose. Ranger lunged forward, just as a shadow moved behind the door, and a man stepped inside the courtroom. Pale, frail, eyes sunken with fear. The room fell completely silent, because every single person recognized him instantly. Brian Keller, the missing witness, the man whose disappearance had stalled the entire case, the man everyone believed had been silenced, or worse. He stumbled forward, shaking violently, staring directly at Emma. And then, his voice cracking, he whispered, "The child she knows." The courtroom descended into panic. Ranger barked once, sharp, explosive. Emma clung to her mother, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispering Ranger's name again and again, as if trying to warn him or comfort him. The judge's gavel slammed down repeatedly, echoing like gunshots. But nothing could drown out the tension gripping the room. Because it was suddenly, painfully clear. Emma Sinclair had spoken for a reason. And whatever Brian Keller had just revealed was only the beginning. The courtroom's atmosphere had shifted from tense anticipation to a frozen, charged silence. Every eye followed Brian Keller as he trembled in the doorway, his gaunt frame looking almost like a shadow of a man who had been running from fear and perhaps death for days. His eyes, wide and frantic, locked on Emma, and in that instant a collective shiver ran through the courtroom. Even the judge, a man who had presided over hundreds of cases, felt a knot tighten in his chest. This was not ordinary courtroom drama. This was raw, unpredictable danger manifesting in real time. Deputy Cole Harrington's grip on Ranger's leash was tight enough to strain his knuckles. The K-9's body was taut, every muscle coiled like a spring, ears flicking, nostrils flaring as he analyzed the stranger. But instead of the aggression Cole expected, Ranger's stance was unusual, protective, almost reverential toward Emma, yet ready to strike at any moment. Cole had handled countless alerts, but nothing had prepared him for this. A toddler commanding the attention and instincts of a highly trained police dog, with a single whisper. Emma had retreated slightly, her small hands clutching her mother's fingers as her brown eyes never left Brian. Then, slowly, deliberately, she lifted one tiny hand and pointed at him, her expression calm yet commanding, like someone twice her age. Ranger growled low in his throat, a sound that vibrated against Cole's chest and set the hairs on the back of his neck on end. Something about the child's behavior unnerved everyone. The room, filled with adults trained to maintain composure, seemed suddenly fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Megan Sinclair's voice cracked as she whispered, "Emma, honey, what are you doing? Step back, please." But Emma didn't move. She simply stared at Brian, whispering again in that soft, unintelligible tone. Only this time her voice carried urgency, almost desperation. Ranger's growl deepened and he shifted his weight, readying for action, his eyes locked on the doorway. Cole leaned toward Brian, his voice steady but urgent. "Sir, step forward. Tell the court why you're here." Brian's gaze didn't leave Emma. Instead, he swallowed hard, his lips trembling. She knows things she shouldn't," he whispered, barely audible. "Things no one told her, things I tried to hide." He took a trembling step closer, his movements jerky, almost animalistic. The dog, he listens, he remembers what she tells him. Murmurs erupted across the courtroom. The judge pounded the gavel to restore order, but the tension was electric. Emma's mother was pale, almost white, gripping her daughter like she was the only anchor in a suddenly unstable world. "Megan," the judge said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Please explain. What does she know?" Megan swallowed hard. Her hands shook as she tried to form words. She's never spoken like this before. I mean, she barely talks to anyone, Your Honor. She communicates with Ranger sometimes, like they understand each other. But this is different. She hasn't said anything real in months, not like this." Her voice broke, tears threatening to spill. "I don't know what she's saying. I don't know why the dog is reacting, but I'm scared." Cole's eyes never left Ranger. The dog's ears were flattened slightly, his hackles raised, his tail stiff. Every instinct in Cole's body screamed that something unseen, something dangerous was happening. Ranger wasn't just alert, he was aware. And somehow, incredibly, he was aware in a way that involved a 3-year-old. Brian suddenly broke the silence, his voice cracking like dry ice. They were watching. They've been watching all along. They know what she knows." He stepped closer to Emma, his hands trembling. "You don't understand," she told him. She told Ranger everything. His eyes darted to the back hallway. He's going to come for her. The courtroom froze. Everyone instinctively turned toward the hallway that Ranger had been fixated on. The room's security officers stiffened, hands on radios, ready to move. But before anyone could act, a soft, deliberate click echoed from the corridor. A shadow passed across the slightly cracked doorway. Ranger's growl erupted into a fierce, commanding bark that seemed to rattle the very walls. Emma didn't flinch. She leaned toward Ranger and whispered again, barely audible but somehow carrying a tone of authority. Ranger's barking ceased immediately, replaced by a low, protective rumble. The dog shifted so that his body formed a barrier between Emma and the approaching figure. Megan gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Emma, stop!" But the child didn't. She stood her ground, small and fragile in appearance but commanding in presence. There was a strange, almost supernatural tension in the room, like watching lightning strike in slow motion. Cole took a cautious step toward the hallway, gun in hand. "Deputy Security," he shouted, voice low but urgent. "Check that hallway now." Two officers sprinted toward the door, their boots echoing off the courthouse floor. But before they could reach it, the shadow separated from the darkness, revealing a thin, haggard man with wild eyes and disheveled clothes. The figure froze in place as he saw Ranger blocking his path. Then his eyes fell on Emma. Recognition and fear flashed across his face. "No," he whispered. She shouldn't be here." Ranger's growl intensified. He lunged slightly, not at the man, but at the line of threat between the child and the stranger. The man raised his hands, trembling violently. "I didn't," he stammered, but Ranger's teeth flashed in a warning. Brian Keller's voice rang out again. "That's him, the one who tried to silence me. He's connected, he knows about the girl, and now he's here." The judge leaned forward, face pale, gripping the bench. "Order, order in the court. Deputy Cole, restrain him immediately." Cole nodded, signaling the two officers to move in. But the man froze, eyes locked on Emma as if he expected the child to make a move. And then, against all logic, Emma whispered again, louder this time. The words weren't understandable, not in any human tongue. But Ranger responded instantly, snapping to full alert. He barked once, long and commanding, signaling immediate danger. The man's body stiffened. He stepped back, eyes wide with realization that this was no ordinary child or dog. Suddenly, the man bolted, racing toward the hallway. Ranger lunged, dragging Cole forward as they sprinted after him. The courtroom erupted into chaos, screams, running feet, and the echo of barking filled the chamber. Officers chased the figure through the courthouse corridors, doors slamming, papers scattering. Inside, Megan clutched Emma, rocking her gently. The child's small frame was trembling, but her eyes sparkled with a strange mixture of fear and authority. He's coming," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Ranger, he knows." Cole re-entered the room moments later, out of breath. The man had escaped temporarily, but Ranger remained calm now, back at Emma's side, ears still alert, eyes never leaving her. The judge sank back into his chair, pale and shaken. "Mrs. Sinclair, what is happening here? How does a child communicate with a police dog like this?" Megan shook her head, unable to answer. "I don't know, Your Honor. I just know he listens to her. He understands her. And I don't know what she told him, but it's something dangerous. Something they don't want anyone to know." The courtroom remained tense. Every person present, journalists, officers, attorneys, spectators, felt a chill run down their spines. Emma's small hand reached out, brushing Ranger's fur again, whispering a word that sounded like a name or perhaps a warning. Ranger stiffened. His nose twitched, every muscle coiled. And then from somewhere deep in the courthouse, a faint sound echoed, a soft footstep, deliberate and slow, coming from the hallway where the man had fled. Ranger barked once, a single sharp bark that commanded attention, then growled low, warning of imminent danger. The judge froze. Brian Keller's eyes widened. Megan clutched Emma tighter. Cole raised his weapon again, positioning himself between the child and the unseen threat. The courtroom felt suspended in a moment of pure tension, as if the air itself were holding its breath. Emma whispered one final time, her voice trembling yet commanding. Ranger responded instantly, stepping protectively in front of her. Every person in the room watched in stunned silence, knowing that whatever was coming next would change everything. And then the footsteps stopped. The room waited, the air thickened, and no one moved, because in that moment everyone knew that what happened next would reveal a secret far greater than anyone could have imagined. The courthouse seemed to shrink around them. Every eye tracked Emma, the child who had turned an ordinary courtroom into a vortex of fear and fascination. Ranger's massive body remained a living shield, muscles taut, ears flicked forward, nostrils flaring as he scanned every corner, every shadow. His presence alone commanded the room, yet all eyes were on Emma, tiny, fragile, impossibly brave. Megan held her daughter closer, whispering softly, "Emma, sweetheart, please stay calm." But Emma didn't respond. Her attention was locked entirely on the back hallway where the unseen footsteps had halted. She whispered again, softly, insistently, and Ranger twitched, responding like a soldier receiving a silent command. Deputy Cole's mind raced. He had handled the most dangerous criminals in the state. He had been in shootouts, hostage situations, and standoffs with armed men. But nothing had ever prepared him for a toddler controlling a K-9's instincts with whispered words. He lowered his gun slightly, realizing that Ranger wasn't reacting to him. He was reacting to Emma and something beyond human comprehension. Brian Keller's pale face was nearly ghostly under the fluorescent courtroom lights. He swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he took a tentative step forward. She remembers," he muttered. "She told him everything. She didn't just see it, she told the dog. And somehow he understood. He acted. That's why they've been chasing her. That's why they tried to," he choked on his words, voice cracking. The judge slammed his gavel, his face pale. "Order, order in the courtroom. This is preposterous." But even he couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. His eyes flicked between Emma and Ranger, the child and the dog, trying and failing to process what he was witnessing. Emma took a deep breath, whispering again. This time, Cole caught fragments of what sounded like names, locations, phrases, all spoken in a strange, urgent rhythm that made his skin crawl. Ranger's hackles rose and he stepped slightly forward, positioning his massive frame as a barrier. Every instinct Cole had honed over decades screamed. Something dangerous was close. Then a sound shattered the fragile calm, a sudden metallic click from the back hallway. Ranger's growl erupted, low and commanding, echoing off the walls like thunder in a canyon. Everyone froze. Megan clutched Emma's hand, squeezing with all the strength of a parent desperate to protect her child. The gallery of journalists and onlookers was silent now, too stunned to speak. The courtroom doors at the rear creaked open slowly, revealing a figure partially obscured in shadow. The man froze as he saw Ranger blocking his path, and then his eyes fell on Emma. Recognition, fear, and something darker, anger, flashed across his face. He raised his hands, trembling. "Don't move," Cole barked, weapon raised. Ranger growled, low and protective, refusing to budge. Brian Keller's voice cracked as he shouted, "It's him. The one who tried to silence me. He knows about her. He knows what she's seen." The man's lips trembled as he whispered something inaudible, but Ranger's response was immediate. He barked twice, short, precise, like a command. Then he lunged slightly, not to attack, but to position himself directly between Emma and the man. Emma's small hand reached out, brushing Ranger's fur, whispering words that seemed to calm him slightly, but not enough to lower his guard. Megan's face was pale, her fingers trembling around Emma's wrist. "Emma, baby, come back to me, please," she pleaded. But the child didn't move. She remained rooted, whispering again, her voice soft but commanding. Her small figure seemed impossibly brave in the face of danger, a defiance that no adult could muster so naturally. Cole motioned to two nearby officers. "Restrain him, now." But the man didn't resist. Instead, he froze, staring at Emma as if her presence alone had stripped him of his power. The tension in the room was unbearable. Every heartbeat felt like a drum echoing through a canyon. Then suddenly, the man bolted, not toward anyone, not toward escape, but toward the hallway leading out of the courtroom. Ranger sprang after him instantly, dragging Cole forward. The sound of rapid barking and pounding feet filled the chamber as officers rushed to intervene. Papers flew off benches, microphones clattered, and journalists scrambled to record every moment. Megan screamed, clutching Emma as the child's small hand slid into hers. "No, Emma!" But Emma held firm, her eyes locked on Ranger, her whispers never ceasing. The bond between child and dog was now undeniable, a silent, urgent communication that neither adults nor officers could comprehend. Brian Keller stepped forward, pale and shaking. "They're after her," he shouted. "They know she saw everything. She's the only one who can identify them. They can't let her testify. That's why they tried to silence me." His voice cracked, nearly hysterical. "And now they're here, right now." Cole's mind raced. He had to act, but he also had to protect Emma. Ranger, sensing the gravity of the situation, didn't wait for orders. He had already positioned himself to shield the child. Cole realized that Ranger's instincts were no longer just about police training. They were intertwined with Emma herself. She had somehow communicated information the dog instinctively understood. Outside the hallway, muffled footsteps echoed. Ranger growled, the sound deep and resonant, vibrating in the courtroom floor. Emma whispered again, urgency in every syllable. Ranger's body tensed further, tail rigid, paws planted firmly. He wasn't going to move an inch until the threat was neutralized. Megan held Emma closer, tears streaming down her face. "Sweetheart, please come back to me. Please, baby." But Emma didn't step away. She whispered again, her voice carrying authority that seemed impossible for someone so small. Suddenly the back door slammed open, and another figure appeared, this one taller, more menacing, a shadow moving with purpose. Ranger growled even louder, a warning, a declaration, a challenge. The man froze, realizing the dog was not ordinary. Ranger's eyes were locked on him with unwavering focus. Brian Keller's face went pale. "It's him, the real mastermind. He's come to finish what they started." Murmurs erupted in the courtroom. Officers drew their weapons, moving cautiously, but Ranger's stance made it clear. No one was to advance beyond this point. Emma whispered again, words only Ranger seemed to understand. Instantly, Ranger barked once short, commanding, then lunged toward the hallway, dragging Cole forward as the officers followed. Megan clutched Emma, rocking her gently. The child's small frame trembled, but her eyes shone with fierce intelligence. She whispered again, a long, urgent sentence that seemed to carry both warning and guidance. Ranger responded, taking a protective position in front of her once more. The judge's gavel slammed down repeatedly, but no one paid attention. The courtroom had become a battleground of silent communication, instinct, and pure tension. Every person present understood, without words, that Emma held knowledge that was dangerous, knowledge that could change everything. And then, as if on cue, the hallway erupted in movement. The taller man advanced, steps deliberate, but Ranger lunged again, teeth flashing in warning. Officers tackled him to the ground, restraining him while Ranger barked, growled, and maintained an unbreakable shield around Emma. The room erupted into chaos, shouts, running footsteps, cries, and the echo of Ranger's authoritative barks. Megan clutched Emma tightly, holding her daughter close, feeling the small body tremble, yet noticing the unshakable determination in her eyes. Brian Keller whispered almost to himself, "She's the only one who knows everything." His voice cracked, eyes wide with terror and relief. "And the dog, he's protecting her, just as she taught him." The judge, pale and shaken, slammed the gavel once more. Order, order in the courtroom. But the authority of the gavel was powerless against the reality unfolding before him. A toddler had transformed a courtroom into a stage of suspense, danger, and revelation, and no adult could control it. Emma whispered one final time, her voice barely audible, yet carrying a weight no one could deny. Ranger responded immediately, stepping closer to her, growling toward the restrained man as if to warn him that the child was untouchable. The entire courtroom held its breath, waiting for what would happen next, knowing that the truth was about to emerge, and that the child and the dog were at the center of it all. The courthouse was a storm of tension, every heartbeat echoing through the wooden walls as though amplifying the chaos. Officers had restrained the taller man, dark-jacketed, dangerous, and clearly the orchestrator of threats against Brian Keller, but the courtroom still felt unsafe. Ranger, massive and alert, remained positioned between Emma and the restrained figure, his gaze unwavering, his body rigid. He was not just a K-9. He had become a living guardian, responding to commands only Emma seemed capable of giving. Megan clutched Emma to her chest, trying to shield her from the intensity of the situation. Emma, however, didn't cower. She pressed her small hand against Ranger's thick neck, whispering softly, and the dog relaxed just enough to signal reassurance, but not enough to lower his guard. It was clear to everyone. The child and the dog shared an understanding far beyond normal human communication. Brian Keller stepped forward, pale and shaking, his hands still trembling as he gestured toward the restrained man. He's the one behind it all, Keller whispered. The threats, the disappearances, the attempts to silence me, and now he's here. He knew she could identify him. He knew she could see everything. That's why they were desperate to stop her. The judge, a man accustomed to controlling chaos with words and gavel strikes, looked more powerless than ever. "Mr. Keller," he said, voice steady but tinged with disbelief, "you need to explain this calmly. What exactly is going on? How does a toddler, a child, know these things?" Megan shook her head violently. "Your Honor, I can't explain it. I don't know. She just communicates with Ranger. That's all I know. She's never spoken like this before, not to anyone. And now I don't even understand what's happening." Her voice cracked. She's not just a child right now. She's warning us." Ranger growled low in his throat, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. His gaze remained fixed on the restrained man, whose eyes darted nervously between Emma and the officers. Then, almost imperceptibly, Ranger shifted his weight, blocking the man's forward path, signaling that any further movement could trigger a reaction. Emma whispered again, a soft string of words that no adult could understand. The room was silent, save for the low rumble of Ranger's growl. And yet, everyone could feel the weight of her communication. It was a warning, a declaration, a message of imminent danger that only Ranger seemed fully to comprehend. Brian Keller took a shaky breath. "They've been planning this for months," he said. "They knew she could identify me, could identify them. They didn't expect her to communicate with Ranger, but she did. That's why I had to disappear. That's why I couldn't come forward sooner. She saw everything and she told him." The judge leaned forward, gripping the edge of the bench. "Mrs. Sinclair," he said, voice firmer now, "you need to tell us exactly what she told Ranger. Everything." Megan's hands shook violently as she held Emma close. I don't know exactly. She just whispers to him. I know she's telling him something important. I see it in Ranger's reactions. I've never seen him respond like this before. And now I'm terrified for her." A new sound cut through the tension, a faint tapping from the rear hallway. Ranger's ears flicked. His body stiffened. His tail bristled. Every instinct he possessed screamed danger. The restrained man tensed as well, realizing that the situation was far from resolved. Brian Keller's voice trembled as he spoke. "They sent someone else. Another one. I don't know who, but they're here. They're still here. And they'll do anything to keep her quiet." The judge's eyes widened, his gavel forgotten on the bench. The entire courtroom shifted, the air thick with fear, anticipation, and disbelief. Every adult instinct told them to flee, to take control, but the presence of Emma and Ranger made it impossible to act normally. The child had become the center of the storm, and the dog had become its shield. Ranger growled again, deeper this time, vibrating through the room, signaling immediate threat. Emma whispered once more, and this time Ranger moved slightly, just enough to indicate a clear defensive line. The restrained man's eyes widened in fear. He realized that whatever Emma had communicated to Ranger was not just a signal, it was knowledge. Knowledge of a plan, a threat, a danger he had hoped no one would uncover. Megan whispered frantically to her daughter, "Emma, baby, don't do anything else, please." But Emma didn't move. Her gaze stayed fixed on Ranger, and her whispers continued, urgent, precise, commanding. Brian Keller swallowed hard. She saw everything, the threats, the names, the faces. She saw what they were planning, and she told Ranger, that's why he's reacting like this. He understands. He knows what's coming, and that's why they're desperate to stop her. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the rear hallway. Everyone jumped. Ranger's growl erupted into a ferocious bark, his teeth bared, his stance unbreakable. Megan clutched Emma, shielding her, yet the child remained calm, whispering, directing Ranger with a clarity that stunned everyone. Cole moved quickly, signaling officers to secure the rear exit. "They're not done yet," he warned. "Someone else is coming, and Ranger isn't going to back down." From the back hallway emerged a figure. A second man, shorter, stockier, moving with careful precision, eyes darting around, clearly trying to assess the situation. Ranger barked sharply, snapping into position as a defensive barrier between Emma and the newcomer. The man froze, realizing that he was not just facing officers, not just facing the restrained man, but facing a child and a dog working together with an almost supernatural understanding. Brian Keller's voice was frantic. "It's them, the accomplices. They're here to finish what they started. If they get near her, if they touch her, it's over." The judge slammed his gavel repeatedly. "Order, order." But his words had little effect. The tension in the room had reached a crescendo. Every person present could feel the danger, could feel the stakes, and could see the bond between Emma and Ranger, a bond that had become the only barrier between safety and catastrophe. Emma whispered again, softly but with urgency. Ranger responded immediately, growling, teeth bared, and shifting to intercept the second man. Megan clutched her daughter tighter, heart racing, but the child remained composed, her small hands guiding Ranger, her whispers directing him with precision. The stocky man hesitated, clearly realizing that this was no ordinary situation. He stepped back, eyes wide, and whispered something to the restrained man. Ranger growled louder, his protective instinct now fully engaged. Cole whispered to an officer, "Get the other exit secured. No one leaves until we know what we're dealing with." Brian Keller, voice trembling, added, "They're desperate. They know she can identify them. They know what she saw. That's why they came here. That's why they're willing to risk everything. And they'll do anything to stop her." Ranger barked again, and everyone froze. Emma's whispers became more urgent, a pattern of words, sounds, and tones that only Ranger seemed to fully understand. The dog's entire body stiffened, ears forward, tail rigid, hackles raised. He was ready to defend, ready to attack, ready to respond to a threat only the child could communicate. The courtroom was silent now, every eye locked on Emma and Ranger. The restrained man and the second figure were frozen, realizing the child and the dog together were more dangerous than any adult armed with weapons. Megan's voice cracked as she whispered to Emma, "Sweetheart, baby, you don't have to do this. Please come back to me." Emma's brown eyes never left Ranger. She whispered once more, longer this time, a clear command that seemed to carry authority and knowledge beyond her years. Ranger responded immediately, shifting his stance, growling and positioning himself between the child and both men. The tension reached a breaking point. Everyone in the room understood that what happened next would determine the safety of the child, the outcome of the case, and perhaps reveal secrets that had been hidden far too long. And then Ranger's bark cut through the air, sharp, commanding, and final. Both men froze in their tracks, realizing that the child had orchestrated the response, that the dog was acting on her knowledge and commands, and that no one could advance without facing consequences. Emma's small hand pressed once more against Ranger's neck. She whispered again, a long string of words that sounded like instructions, warnings, and perhaps names of those involved. Ranger responded instantly, growling, shifting, barking, and fully engaging as if to communicate a message to everyone present. The threat was not over, but she was ready. The judge leaned back in his chair, pale and trembling, gripping the edges of his bench. Brian Keller whispered to no one in particular, voice shaking. She knows. She knows everything, and Ranger is listening. And in that charged, suspended moment, the entire courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. Everyone understood without words that Emma and Ranger together had become the fulcrum of safety and danger, that they alone held knowledge no adult could fully grasp, and that what came next would reveal secrets long buried, secrets that could shock the entire community. The tension in the courtroom had reached a fever pitch. Every person present felt as though the walls themselves were closing in. The restrained man in the dark jacket stared at Emma and Ranger as if seeing them for the first time. Not just a child and a dog, but a combined force he could not comprehend. His accomplice, the shorter, stocky man, crouched near the rear exit, eyes darting, calculating his next move, aware that the slightest misstep could trigger disaster. Ranger's body was a living barrier, every muscle coiled, every ear flicked to the faintest sound. He had become more than a trained K9. He was an extension of Emma's instincts, a protector acting on the whispered commands of a toddler who, moments ago, could barely speak. Emma remained calm, her small hand brushing his fur, whispering with precise authority, each syllable carrying a weight that seemed impossible for someone so young. Deputy Cole Harrington's mind raced. He had never seen a K9 respond with such intelligence and precision to a child, and yet here they were, controlling the threat together. Cole motioned for officers to secure the exits, radio crackling with urgent commands. Lock all doors. Nobody in or out until we assess the situation. Megan clutched Emma tightly, shaking as she tried to keep her daughter safe while realizing that Emma herself was not afraid. There was a strange bravery in her expression, a calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding them. "Sweetheart, baby, please," Megan whispered, voice trembling. "It's okay now. You don't have to." Emma interrupted with a whisper of her own, low and deliberate, a tone that made Ranger stiffen and take a step forward. Megan froze, realizing her daughter was in command, that Ranger was responding to her in ways no adult could fully understand. Brian Keller stepped closer, pale and shaken. "They can't get her," he said, voice urgent. "They'll do anything to stop her from testifying. She saw what they did. She knows who they are. And they," he broke off, eyes widening in terror as Ranger barked sharply, signaling danger from the rear hallway. The stocky accomplice had made a move. He stepped forward cautiously, testing Ranger's response. Ranger's growl escalated into a fierce, warning bark that shook the room. The man froze instantly, realizing that the child had orchestrated this response, that the dog was acting on her knowledge and command. "Stop!" Cole shouted, stepping forward to intercept. Ranger bristled at Cole's sudden movement but did not advance toward him. It was clear. The dog's attention and loyalty were entirely directed at protecting Emma, and no one could interfere, not even law enforcement. Brian Keller pointed toward the stocky man. "He's trying to get to her. He's coming for her." Ranger lunged forward slightly, coiling his massive frame into a defensive position. Emma whispered, guiding him, and the dog reacted instantly, blocking the man from advancing another step. Megan held her daughter closer, terrified, yet realizing that Emma was directing the situation with an authority that left even the adults stunned. The judge slammed his gavel, voice trembling. "Order! Somebody, control this chaos." But no words could override the primal tension filling the room. Ranger's growls echoed against the wooden walls, and the stocky man realized he could not approach without consequences. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the rear hallway. Both accomplices jumped. Ranger barked again, lunging toward the sound. Cole followed, dragging his weapon in position, heart pounding. Officers moved to intercept, but the stocky man panicked, bolting toward the side door. Ranger sprang after him, teeth bared, dragging Cole forward as officers scrambled to contain the situation. Megan screamed, clutching Emma. The child's small frame trembled slightly, but her eyes shone with determination. She whispered to Ranger again, a long string of urgent syllables. Ranger responded immediately, positioning himself as a living shield, ready to intercept any threat. Brian Keller's voice cracked. "She's the only one who can identify them. They can't let her speak. That's why they came. That's why they tried to silence me." His hands shook as he realized the gravity of the moment. And Ranger, he's protecting her because she told him everything. The stocky man's desperation was palpable. He stumbled, realizing he had no path to Emma. Ranger barked again, snapping the man's focus. The restrained man in the dark jacket attempted to shout instructions, but Ranger growled, stepping closer to Emma, signaling that no one could approach. Cole radioed back up urgently. "All units, we have a direct threat in the courthouse. The suspect is attempting to interfere with a minor witness. Lockdown and containment in effect. Proceed with caution, K9 active." Ranger responded immediately to the commands, coiling his body like a spring, growling, barking, and shifting to maintain complete protection over Emma. Megan whispered frantically, "Sweetheart, baby, it's okay, you don't have to do this." But Emma's whispers continued. Cole realized then that Ranger was responding not just to instinct, but to precise, intentional commands. The child had orchestrated the dog's behavior, creating a barrier that no adult could penetrate. Brian Keller's face went pale. "They can't get her," he repeated, voice urgent. "They can't, and if they do, we're all in danger, but she knows. She told Ranger, and he's following her instructions." The taller man in the dark jacket began to panic, realizing that the child and the dog had formed an alliance that no adult could break. He shouted, attempting to assert control, but Ranger's growl escalated, teeth flashing. Emma whispered again, and Ranger barked, lunging slightly, signaling imminent threat. The stocky accomplice bolted toward the exit again, desperate. Ranger lunged, dragging Cole forward. Officers scrambled to intercept, tackling the man before he could escape. The entire courtroom was a whirlwind of noise, screams, barking, running footsteps, the shuffle of shoes against wood floors. Papers flew from benches, microphones clattered, and the sound of Ranger's authoritative barks filled the chamber. Megan held Emma tightly, rocking her gently. The child's body trembled slightly, but her eyes glowed with courage. She whispered to Ranger again, a series of long, deliberate commands. The dog responded instantly, barking, growling, shifting his massive frame to maintain a protective shield. Brian Keller whispered to no one in particular, voice quivering. "She's the only one who knows everything, and Ranger is listening and protecting her." The judge leaned back, pale and shaking, gripping the edges of his bench. The courtroom was suspended in a moment of raw tension. Everyone understood that Emma and Ranger together had become the linchpin of safety and danger. They were the fulcrum on which the entire situation balanced, and any misstep could result in catastrophe. Suddenly, a third sound echoed from the rear hallway, a deliberate step, slow, controlled, approaching. Ranger stiffened, barking sharply. The restrained man and the stocky accomplice froze, realizing that someone else had entered the courthouse. Cole's eyes narrowed. "Another one," he muttered, scanning the hallway. Ranger growled, body taut, tail rigid. Emma whispered once more, guiding him. The dog's response was immediate, positioning himself perfectly between the child and the approaching figure. Megan clutched Emma, terrified, yet she could not help but marvel at her daughter's bravery. The child's whispers continued, urgent and precise, and Ranger followed her commands perfectly, coiling his massive body like a living fortress. Brian Keller's voice trembled. "They're desperate," he said. "They know she can identify them. They know she saw everything. That's why they came. That's why they're willing to risk everything. And she's the only one who can stop them." The stocky man, realizing he had no way forward, froze. Ranger's teeth flashed, growl resonating, signaling imminent consequences. Emma's whispers became even more deliberate. The child was orchestrating the defense, directing Ranger with a precision and authority that left everyone in awe. The courtroom held its collective breath. Every person understood, without words, that Emma and Ranger together had become the fulcrum of safety and danger. They alone held knowledge no adult could fully grasp, and the next moments would reveal the truth, dangerous, explosive, and unavoidable. The tension in the Cedar Falls courthouse was palpable, a living, breathing entity that gripped every person inside. Ranger's low, protective growl resonated through the room like a warning bell, alerting all to the invisible threads of danger Emma could somehow sense. Megan's grip on her daughter tightened with each passing second, and the child remained unnervingly composed, her soft whispers carrying authority that no adult could command. The entire courtroom held its collective breath, waiting, knowing that the climax of this unfolding nightmare was imminent. Deputy Cole Harrington's muscles were taut with anticipation. He had been a cop long enough to expect danger at every turn, but nothing in his experience compared to this. An infant directing a fully trained K-9 to protect her from unseen threats, to anticipate moves he himself could barely comprehend. He scanned the courtroom, ensuring officers were in position, radios crackling with urgent instructions, yet all attention remained on the child and the dog. Brian Keller, pale and trembling, stepped closer to the bench. His eyes darted between Emma and Ranger. "They can't get to her," he whispered, voice hoarse. "She's the only one who saw everything. She knows who they are, what they did, and now she's telling Ranger. That's why they came here. That's why they tried to silence me before and why they're desperate now." Megan shook her head, her voice breaking. "Emma, baby, you don't have to, please. It's okay now. You're safe." But Emma didn't flinch. Her small hand pressed against Ranger's thick neck, whispering a soft, deliberate stream of syllables. The dog responded instantly, his muscles tensing, eyes locked on the back hallway, ears flicking at the faintest sound. He was ready, a living shield, anticipating the next move with preternatural precision. Suddenly, the rear door creaked open and a shadow appeared. Ranger stiffened, teeth flashing in warning. The restrained accomplice, the taller man who had orchestrated the earlier chaos, froze mid-step. His eyes widened as he recognized the child and the K-9 working together as if they were a single entity. Ranger barked sharply, a warning that reverberated against the walls, a sound that left no doubt. Any attempt to approach would be met with immediate defense. Brian Keller's voice cracked. "It's him, the one behind everything. If he gets near her, if he touches her, it's over." His words were frantic and yet precise, highlighting the danger everyone now understood. The stocky accomplice, realizing the futility of moving forward, hesitated. Ranger growled low, warning him, while Emma whispered again. The child's tone was commanding, urgent, and precise, guiding Ranger with a level of strategy and understanding that left everyone present, officers, journalists, even the judge, stunned. Megan's tears streamed freely. "Sweetheart, baby, don't do this," she whispered. "Please come back to me." But Emma's gaze remained locked on Ranger, whispering, directing him with calm authority. She had become the center of a storm that no adult could control, a child whose instincts and knowledge had turned a simple K-9 into a protective force no one could bypass. Cole moved cautiously toward the back hallway, signaling officers to cover every angle. "All exits secure," he barked into his radio. "No one leaves, no one enters until we assess the situation fully. K-9 is active. Stand by." Ranger responded immediately, shifting to block any path that could threaten Emma. The restrained accomplice tried to speak, to assert control, but Ranger's teeth flashed, warning him into silence. Emma whispered again, longer this time, almost a rhythm, a code. The dog reacted instantly, growling and shifting his stance to intercept even the smallest movement toward the child. Every adult in the room realized that this toddler was orchestrating the situation with a clarity that defied comprehension. Then a sudden sound from the hallway, the faint click of a metal door, deliberate, controlled, set Ranger into full alert. He barked once, a sharp, commanding bark that froze the accomplice in place. Emma whispered again, her small voice threading through the tense atmosphere. Ranger reacted immediately, positioning his massive frame between the child and the doorway. Brian Keller's hands shook as he whispered, "They're desperate. They know she can identify them. They know what she saw, that's why they came. That's why they're willing to risk everything." The stocky accomplice panicked. He bolted toward the rear exit, desperate to flee or attempt an attack. Ranger lunged, dragging Cole forward, teeth flashing, growls filling the air. Officers tackled him just in time, restraining him before he could reach Emma. The room erupted in chaos, screams, shuffling feet, papers flying, microphones clattering, and Ranger barking relentlessly. Megan held Emma tightly, rocking her gently. The child's small body trembled slightly, but her eyes were bright, alert, and filled with unshakable determination. She whispered again, giving Ranger precise instructions, each word carrying a weight no adult could command. Brian Keller's voice was almost a whisper now, trembling yet urgent. "She's the only one who knows everything, and Ranger is listening, protecting her, following her instructions." The judge, gripping his bench, stared in disbelief. This is unprecedented," he muttered. "A child directing a K-9 against adult criminals. This is beyond comprehension." Suddenly, from the hallway, a muffled voice called out, sharp and commanding, speaking words that made the air in the courtroom feel heavier. Ranger's hackles rose instantly, his growl deepening. Emma's whispers became faster, urgent, as if she were conveying a message that could prevent disaster. The restrained accomplice froze, eyes wide with fear. Cole barked orders. "Everyone stay back, keep calm, secure the exits." Ranger's body responded instantly, blocking access to the hallway, barking, snapping, coiling into a barrier that seemed impossible to penetrate. Emma whispered once more, longer, more deliberate, her small voice threading a pattern of instruction. Ranger reacted instantly, moving in perfect synchrony with her commands, positioning himself as both shield and deterrent. Megan whispered frantically, tears streaming, "Sweetheart, baby, please, it's okay, come back to me." But Emma remained calm, her eyes fixed on Ranger, her whispers precise and unwavering. Brian Keller, pale and shaking, muttered, "They can't touch her, they can't. They don't know she told Ranger everything, she saw it all, and he understands." The courtroom was suspended in a moment of sheer tension. Every person understood that Emma and Ranger together had become the axis on which the safety of everyone depended. The restrained accomplice and the stocky man realized that the child's knowledge and the dog's instinctive response made them untouchable. Then unexpectedly, Ranger barked sharply again, lunging slightly, signaling imminent movement from the rear hallway. All heads turned. The third figure, the mastermind of the threats, stepped into the light, tall, dark, eyes cold and calculating. He froze as Ranger's gaze met his, teeth bared, muscles coiled. Emma whispered one final time, her voice soft but commanding. Ranger responded instantly, barking, growling, shifting, positioning himself between the child and the man. The tension in the room was electric, every person present frozen, understanding that what would happen next could change everything. Megan held Emma tighter, Brian Keller's face went pale, and the judge sat rigid, gripping the edge of his bench. Ranger's stance was perfect, a living shield guided by the whispers of a 3-year-old who knew too much. And then in that charged, suspended moment, the entire courtroom realized. What Emma knew, and what Ranger understood, was far greater than anyone could imagine. The secrets about the crimes, the conspiracies, and the threats were about to be revealed, and no one would leave unaffected. The courtroom held its breath. Ranger's teeth glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights, his muscles coiled like springs, and his eyes locked on the tall man who had just stepped into the chamber. Every instinct in Cole Harrington's body screamed danger, yet nothing could prepare him for what was unfolding. Emma, small and unassuming, remained calm, whispering in a tone that conveyed both urgency and command. Her words were soft, yet the dog reacted with immediate obedience, positioning himself perfectly to protect her. Megan Sinclair's hands trembled as she held her daughter closer, her chest tight with fear. "Emma, baby, it's okay, don't," she whispered, but Emma didn't look at her. Her brown eyes were focused entirely on Ranger and the looming threat. She whispered again, precise and deliberate, and Ranger shifted slightly, tail rigid, body blocking any path to the child. The air in the courtroom seemed to crackle with tension, every heartbeat amplified in the collective awareness of those present. Brian Keller stepped forward, pale and shaking, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is him," he said. "The one who tried to silence me, the one behind all the threats, and he knows she saw everything. He'll stop at nothing." His hands shook violently, betraying a terror that had taken months to manifest. And now he's here in the courtroom, seeing her, seeing Ranger. The judge slammed his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore some sense of order. "Order! Everyone remain seated. This is extraordinary, but control is required." His voice quavered with uncertainty, betraying the fact that even he could not comprehend the scene before him. A toddler and a K-9, operating as a single unit, confronting criminal forces in real time. The tall man froze, eyes darting between Emma and Ranger, calculating his next move. He realized immediately that this was no ordinary child and no ordinary dog. Ranger's stance, every muscle taut, every growl deliberate, signaled a preparedness that no trained adult could match. Emma's whispers continued, soft but commanding, and Ranger responded instantly, coiling his body, shifting slightly, letting the man know that any attempt to advance would be met with immediate force. Megan whispered frantically, voice breaking, "Emma, baby, you don't have to, please come back to me." But Emma remained focused, calm beyond her years, her small hands resting on Ranger's thick neck, guiding him with precise, almost instinctual authority. The child had become the center of a storm of danger that no adult could control, and yet her bravery seemed boundless. Cole Harrington stepped forward cautiously, eyes scanning every potential escape route. "All exits secure," he muttered into his radio. "No one enters or leaves until we fully assess the threat. K-9 is active. Proceed with extreme caution." Ranger growled low in response, acknowledging Cole's presence but making it clear his loyalty and attention belonged entirely to Emma. Brian Keller's hands shook violently. "She's the only one who knows everything," he whispered. "She saw the threats, the faces, the names, and she told Ranger. That's why they're desperate. That's why they came to stop her from speaking." His voice cracked, teetering on hysteria as he realized the stakes. And now it all comes to light. The stocky accomplice, restrained but still within the courtroom, watched with widening eyes. He realized the magnitude of the child's knowledge and the dog's awareness. He had underestimated them, thought they were defenseless, and now he could see clearly that any attempt to move or act would be catastrophic. Ranger's growl deepened, warning him not to make a single step toward Emma. Suddenly, the tall man's hand twitched toward his coat pocket. Cole's reflexes kicked in. "Hands where I can see them," he shouted. Ranger barked sharply, a warning synchronized with Cole's command. The man froze, eyes flicking to Ranger, realizing that the dog had anticipated his movement before any human could react. Emma whispered urgently, guiding Ranger into a more defensive stance. Megan's heart pounded in her chest. "Emma, baby, don't provoke him, it's okay." But Emma's whispers did not stop. She remained a calm, commanding presence, a child wielding authority over a dog trained to protect her at all costs. The symbiosis between them was undeniable, terrifying, and awe-inspiring. Brian Keller's voice trembled. "She told him everything," he said, nodding toward Ranger. "He knows everything, the crimes, the threats, the names, and now it's about to come out." The tall man froze completely, realizing the precariousness of his position. Ranger's growl intensified, teeth bared, stance unyielding. Emma whispered again, guiding Ranger as he subtly shifted to block any approach, eyes fixed on the man. The courtroom was utterly silent, everyone holding their collective breath. Then, in a moment that seemed suspended in time, Ranger barked once, sharply, signaling an imminent revelation. Emma's whispers became urgent and deliberate, a series of sounds that only Ranger fully understood. Cole and the officers watched, tense, understanding that whatever was about to happen depended entirely on this child and her K-9 companion. The restrained accomplice gasped, realizing that Emma's knowledge communicated through Ranger had effectively neutralized them both. The tall man's eyes widened in horror. He took a step back, hands raised, but Ranger anticipated even the slightest movement. Emma whispered again, guiding him precisely. The child's calm, commanding presence belied the fear that gripped the courtroom. Megan clutched Emma tightly, tears streaming, heart pounding. "It's okay, baby, it's okay now." But the child remained focused. She whispered, directing Ranger, communicating a sequence of instructions and warnings that only he could interpret. Ranger responded instantly, shifting, growling, barking, positioning himself perfectly to maintain the protective barrier. Brian Keller stepped closer, voice trembling. "They can't touch her. They don't understand that she knows, and Ranger understands. That's why they're frozen, that's why they can't move. She's the only one who can reveal everything, and he's following her instructions." Suddenly, the tall man made a subtle motion, trying to retrieve a small device from his coat pocket. Ranger barked sharply, lunging forward, teeth bared, muscles coiled. The man froze instantly, eyes wide in realization that every movement was being monitored and countered. Emma whispered again, and Ranger responded, blocking any possible path to the child. Cole shouted, "Freeze! Don't move!" But it was Ranger's instincts, guided by Emma's whispers, that truly immobilized the man. Every officer in the room understood. This toddler had orchestrated the protection of herself, and Ranger had executed it flawlessly. The courtroom seemed suspended in a bubble of tension. Everyone waited, hearts pounding, knowing that the truth was about to be revealed. Emma whispered once more, long and deliberate, a sequence of sounds that carried both warning and command. Ranger responded immediately, barking, growling, shifting to maintain perfect protection. Brian Keller whispered, almost in awe, "She's the only one who knows everything, and Ranger, he's listening, protecting her, following her instructions." The restrained accomplice and the tall man realized the futility of their position. They were trapped, neutralized, and at the mercy of a toddler's knowledge and a dog's instincts. Ranger's stance was perfect, a living fortress guided by Emma's whispered commands. Megan held her daughter, heart racing, while the judge leaned forward, pale and gripping the edge of his bench. The entire courtroom seemed to pulse with anticipation, knowing that what would happen next would reveal secrets long hidden, exposing crimes, conspiracies, and threats that no one could ignore. Emma whispered one final time, her voice calm yet commanding. Ranger barked once sharply, signaling that the moment of revelation had arrived. The tall man froze, eyes wide, realizing that the child and the dog together had undone months of planning, danger, and threat. And in that suspended, breathless moment, the courtroom knew. The truth was about to explode into view, guided by a 3-year-old child and executed by a K-9 who understood more than any human could imagine. The courtroom was suspended in a tense silence, as though the air itself held its breath. Ranger, massive and alert, remained a living shield between Emma and the restrained criminals. His low growl vibrated through the room, a warning and a promise. Any attempt to threaten this child would be met with immediate, uncompromising defense. Emma, small but resolute, whispered once more to the dog, guiding his movements with an authority that left everyone, including law enforcement and the judge, utterly awestruck. Megan Sinclair clutched her daughter tightly, tears streaming down her face. Her heart pounded with fear, awe, and overwhelming relief. "Emma, baby, it's over," she whispered softly. But Emma's eyes stayed fixed on Ranger, on the restrained men, on the subtle shifts in the room. She was calm, focused, a child who had become the fulcrum of life and danger, of justice and revelation. Deputy Cole Harrington, weapon drawn but held cautiously at his side, scanned the room. He had handled countless dangerous situations, but never one like this. A toddler and a K-9 were effectively controlling the most dangerous men in the courthouse, anticipating every move, responding before human reflexes could. His voice, steady yet tense, carried authority. "All units maintain positions. Nobody moves until we confirm the situation is fully secure. K-9 is active." Ranger acknowledged, subtly shifting to block the criminals' vision and movement, obeying Emma's precise instructions. Brian Keller, pale and shaken, approached the judge. "Your Honor," he said, voice trembling, "this child, this dog, they've revealed everything. The threats, the conspiracies, the names, they've forced the truth into the open. She knows what happened, and Ranger is listening, protecting her, following her every command." His eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and awe. "We're only safe because of her. She's the only reason these criminals haven't escaped, haven't hurt anyone, haven't silenced the truth." The restrained men, realizing the futility of any further action, slumped in their positions. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with fear, yet tinged with disbelief. They had planned meticulously, assuming adults could manipulate, intimidate, or overpower any obstacle, but this child had turned the tables entirely. Ranger, guided by Emma's whispers, maintained a perfect barrier, unyielding, unbreakable, and impossibly precise. Emma whispered again, a sequence of soft, deliberate sounds. Ranger barked sharply, a signal to the officers. Cole understood immediately. The child was directing a final move, one that would ensure the immediate containment of the threats. With careful coordination, officers approached, moving swiftly yet cautiously. Ranger allowed them to secure the restrained men fully, without leaving Emma vulnerable, every motion choreographed by the child's whispered commands. The judge, pale and gripping the edges of the bench, finally spoke. This is extraordinary," he said, voice trembling. "A child directing a trained K-9 against dangerous adults and preserving life and justice. I have never witnessed anything like this." His gavel remained untouched. Words, law, and authority were powerless against the raw, instinctive, and precise coordination of a 3-year-old and a dog. Megan released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Emma, baby, you were incredible," she whispered, tears streaming freely. Emma turned her head briefly, a small smile on her face, whispering softly to Ranger as if to say, "We did it." Ranger responded with a soft woof, a subtle relaxation in his stance, but still alert, still ready. The bond between them was undeniable. A child had trained a dog not in obedience alone, but in instinctive protection, in understanding threat and danger, and in executing precise, life-saving actions. Brian Keller approached Emma carefully, kneeling to her level. His voice was shaking but steady. You saved everyone here," he said, his eyes wide with awe. "No one else could have done what you just did. You're remarkable. You saw the danger and you guided Ranger. You're a hero." Emma whispered again, softly, and Ranger nudged her gently. Megan felt a swell of pride so intense it almost overwhelmed her. The child had faced fear unimaginable for someone her age, and had acted with courage, intelligence, and focus that few adults could claim. She had turned the tide of a dangerous confrontation, all while remaining a 3-year-old girl in appearance, yet extraordinary in every action. Cole Harrington lowered his weapon slowly, eyes scanning the room one last time. "All threats are secured," he said quietly, awe evident in his voice. "No one moves until the suspects are fully restrained and transported. And that child, she's something else entirely. Ranger wouldn't have acted like this without her. She guided him every step of the way. The tall man, finally realizing the depth of his defeat, slumped into a chair, face pale and hopeless. He looked at Emma and Ranger, understanding that they had outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and neutralized him without a single human adult taking direct action. The courtroom was still charged with tension, yet a sense of relief began to permeate the air. The judge leaned forward, finally regaining some composure. "Given the extraordinary circumstances," he said slowly, "we will document the actions of this child and her K-9 companion for the official record. The bravery, intelligence, and presence of mind displayed today are unprecedented, and they have saved lives." Emma, sensing the moment of calm, finally looked at her mother. She whispered softly, and Ranger relaxed slightly, though still alert. Megan hugged her daughter tightly, tears streaming. "You were amazing, baby, incredible," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved everyone." Brian Keller approached again, voice steady now but full of emotion. "You exposed the truth, Emma. You prevented harm, revealed criminals, and ensured justice could proceed. No one, no adult, no officer could have done what you did today. You are remarkable." The officers began escorting the restrained men out of the courtroom carefully, while Ranger maintained his protective stance until Emma was fully safe. Every step, every movement had been coordinated by the whispers of a child who had seen danger and acted decisively, with a precision that no human could have matched. The media presence, previously chaotic and intrusive, suddenly fell silent. Cameras still flashed, recording the surreal scene, but journalists were aware they were witnessing something extraordinary. A toddler who had communicated danger, guided a fully trained K-9, and effectively neutralized threats that adults had failed to control for months. Megan, holding Emma close, felt a deep sense of awe mixed with relief. Her daughter had faced unimaginable danger and had acted with courage, intelligence, and instinctive authority that left everyone in the courtroom, and soon the nation, in disbelief. Brian Keller whispered one last time, voice hushed but filled with reverence. "You're the only one who could have done this, Emma. You saw everything, you told Ranger, and you saved us all." Emma whispered softly to Ranger once more, and the dog responded with a gentle nuzzle. The bond between them was complete, unbreakable, and undeniable. A child and her K-9, partners in bravery, instinct, and protection. The judge, pale but now composed, finally addressed the courtroom. "Today, we witnessed something beyond precedent. A child's courage paired with a K-9's instinct and training has prevented tragedy, exposed criminals, and preserved life. This will be documented for the record and for history. Emma Sinclair, you have acted with extraordinary bravery. The court acknowledges your remarkable actions." Megan whispered again, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, you're incredible. You saved everyone, you saved me, you saved them all." Emma whispered softly back, brushing Ranger's fur, as if saying, "We did it together." The courtroom began to settle, officers escorting the criminals away, journalists murmuring in disbelief, and everyone slowly realizing the magnitude of what had occurred. Ranger remained close to Emma, alert but calm, a living testament to her guidance, bravery, and intelligence. Brian Keller watched, shaking his head in disbelief. I never thought a child could do this, guide a dog, confront criminals, and save lives. She's extraordinary." And in that moment, the courthouse in Cedar Falls bore witness to a reality almost impossible to comprehend. A toddler and a K-9 had confronted danger, anticipated threats, executed precise protective actions, and preserved life. Every person in the room knew that what had just occurred would be remembered forever. A testament to bravery, instinct, and the unbreakable bond between a child and her loyal dog. Emma whispered once more, softly, a quiet murmur only Ranger could fully understand. The dog responded with a gentle woof, settling at her side. Megan hugged her daughter, the tension finally easing, tears of relief streaming freely. Outside the courthouse, news crews already reported the extraordinary events. Social media erupted, calling the toddler a hero and the K9 a guardian unlike any other. The story of Emma and Ranger spread across the country, inspiring awe, disbelief, and admiration. For Emma, it was just another day, but for everyone else, it was a story of courage, instinct, and the extraordinary bond between a child and her dog, a tale that would never be forgotten.